Most men over 40 struggle to build their lower pecs, and it has nothing to do with their age or their genetics. As someone who once had a flat, undefined chest with no separation at the bottom, to now having my chest as one of the most noticeable parts of my physique, I can confidently say that building your chest is far simpler than you might think. The problem, however, is that most men don't know how to train their lower pecs effectively, and that's exactly what I want to discuss in this video. Why 97% of men over 40 fail to build their lower chest. The truth is, you're probably already doing the right exercises, but growing this part of your chest has less to do with what exercises and more to do with how you're doing them. And to better target your lower pecs, we must first understand some basic anatomy. The pecs are made up of two primary regions, the clavicular head at the top and the larger sternocostal head that runs through the middle and lower portion of the chest. But there's also a third, often overlooked section, the abdominal head. Most anatomy charts and even many lifters ignore it, but it contributes directly to the bottom shelf look of the pecs. Functionally, all of these fibers work together in horizontal adduction, or bringing your arm across your body, but the sternocostal and abdominal fibers are especially active during shoulder extension, or driving your arm down from an overhead position, and internal rotation, rotating your arm inward. So now that you have a better idea of how the lower pecs work, let's jump into why 97% of men over 40 fail to build their lower pecs and how to fix it. Number 1, you're not prioritizing the lower chest. Leaving your lower chest work for the end of your workout is a guaranteed way to keep your lower chest underdeveloped. Research shows that muscles trained earlier in a session experience greater strength and hypertrophy gains compared to those trained later. So start your workout with your lower chest focused movements, as this will ensure maximal fiber recruitment before fatigue sets in. Not only will this result in more muscle growth, but training your lower chest while it's fresh will make progressive overload far easier to achieve. This is critical because pressing strength, whether flat or decline, is strongly correlated with overall chest development, and if you're not sure what exercise to start off with, I recommend some form of decline press or weighted dip. EMG studies have found that these movements produce significantly greater activation in the lower sternocostal fibers compared to flat or incline pressing. That's because the upper and lower pecs, despite being part of the same muscle, are innervated by different motor nerves, which allows them to work somewhat independently. And while flat pressing alone can still build a thick lower chest, if you truly want to bias your training toward the sternocostal and abdominal fibers, decline pressing and dips are the best way to maximize growth in that region. Number 2, you're not using the right angles. It's no secret that decline presses are superior to flat pressing when it comes to targeting the lower chest. That said, not all angles are created equal. A 2020 study comparing the pecs at 4 incline positions found that the flat bench maximized sternocostal activation, while steeper angles shifted emphasis away from the lower chest. Building on this, a 2021 study testing 12 bench press variations, including a 15-degree decline, flat, and 30-degree incline, found that both the sternocostal and abdominal portions of the pecs were most active in the decline condition, especially with a wide pronated grip. Importantly, the abdominal head specifically fired harder in decline than in incline positions. More recently, this 2023 study reported that decline pressing produced greater sternocostal activation than flat pressing. So here's what this means in practice. If you truly want to bias your training toward the lower chest, using decline angles is well supported. But this doesn't have to be limited to barbell benching. You can also apply decline to dumbbell presses, weighted dips, and even cable fly variations. When you perform dips with with a slight forward torso lean, for example, your arm path naturally moves downward and inward, the same motion emphasized in decline pressing. When it comes to cable flies, setting the pulleys above shoulder level allows you to bring your arms down and across the body, which lines up with the fiber direction of the lower chest. Number 3, you're not maximizing the stretch. Based on the length-tension relationship of the pecs, we know that the fibers are active across the full range of motion. Simply put, the lower pecs will benefit most from being trained at longer muscle lengths. In other words, we want to train in ranges where the sternocostal and abdominal fibers are under maximum stretch. In pressing movements, that stretch occurs at the bottom of the decline press or dip when the elbows are well behind the torso and the pec fibers are lengthened across the shoulder joint. If you cut the range short or avoid working in that stretch position, you miss the most powerful growth stimulus available. That's why deep, controlled dips or full-range decline presses are so effective for building the lower chest. Isolation work, like high to low cable flies, can then be used to fully shorten the fibers, but the heavy loading in the stretched position should always be the priority. Number 4, you're not thinking outside the box. While often regarded as a back exercise, the bench pullover has demonstrated considerable activation of the pecs. Research published in the Journal of Physical Education and Sport demonstrates that during pullovers, the pectoralis major shows 28% greater EMG activity compared to the lats. This indicates that the chest muscles are more activated than the back muscles during this exercise. So, why is the pullover so effective for targeting the lower pecs? Well, the lower chest fibers are notably effective as shoulder extensors, particularly at high degrees of shoulder flexion or when the arms are positioned above shoulder height. During the eccentric phase of the pullover, the lower chest fibers are the most stretched, while they also contract the hardest during the concentric phase. This alignment and leverage make the pullover highly effective for engaging and developing the lower portion of the chest. During a pullover, the peak tension occurs when the arms are fully extended above the head. However, to maintain focus on the chest, your range of motion should be limited. Instead of bringing the bar all the way over your chest, stop when the weight is just above your head. This keeps the tension on the pecs and keeps you within the range of motion where the lower pecs have leverage. For the setup, I prefer positioning your body perpendicular to the bench, resting only your upper back. This will allow you to drop the hips lower than the bench height. This setup does 2 things. First, it helps in counterbalancing the weights, making it safer and more stable for heavy lifting. And second, it allows you to accentuate the stretch in the lower pecs, providing a deeper range of motion. And this increased range leads to greater muscle activation and, consequently, better growth. Number 5, you're not training hard enough. When you train with lighter weights, you have to lift to failure to create enough muscle fiber recruitment to maximize the hypertrophy stimulus. That's because lighter loads rely on fatigue mechanisms to tap into the high threshold motor units responsible for muscle growth. And while lighter weights can build the sternocostal region, they tend to create more fatigue and muscle damage that ultimately delay recovery and limit how often you can train your chest. In fact, this 2017 study found that lifting lighter loads created a bigger strength deficit than training with heavy loads. Even 48 hours later, lifters who trained with light loads still hadn't recovered as well as those who trained heavy. Also, anecdotally, I think high rep sets often fail to produce optimal growth because the discomfort and burn make people stop before they reach an optimal proximity to failure, meaning the set feels hard but doesn't create maximum growth stimulus. Heavier loads, on the other hand, recruit high threshold motor units from the very beginning of the set, meaning we can achieve more muscle growth by pushing sets 1 or 2 reps short of failure. The benefit is twofold: more growth with less fatigue and less muscle damage, which allows you to recover faster between chest sessions. And contrary to what many used to believe, more muscle damage doesn't equal more growth. That's because muscle protein synthesis is used to repair damaged fibers before it can build new ones. The more resources spent patching you up, the less you have left for hypertrophy. So when it comes to the lower chest, most of your big compound work should be performed in the 6 to 8 rep range, with each set ending about 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. This balance ensures you're hitting the lower pecs hard enough to stimulate growth without digging yourself into a recovery hole. And if you're still struggling to grow your lower pecs, watch our video on the only 3 lower chest exercises you need for mass. Pair those exercises with the training adjustments we discussed in this video, and you'll have no problem adding mass to your lower chest. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more videos and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next one.